masters of the universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe.
Hi there, welcome to the Megaraptor. As soon as I got my hands on a 3D printer, I started looking for free STLs on the internet. I was born in the 80s and I spent my childhood watching for the classic cartoons. G.I. Joe, Silverhawks, the Thundercats, Ninja Turtles, and of course, He-Man. I found these free models with all characters, but the details were not that great. So instead of printing them as individual 32mm minis, I decided to downscale them and build a diorama. So here we go, Castle Grayskull and He-Man's friends. Let's hit the table! First thing was getting the STL models, which I found for free on Thingiverse under user Oyvind Christ. The link is below in the description. He has designed most of the characters, though I won't include some of them in the diorama. I downscaled the minis for around 25mm tall, keeping He-Man a little bit taller than the rest, and then 3D printed them. I first wanted to focus on Castle Grayskull. As the cartoon's design is not well defined, I looked for some internet references to find the one I liked. There are drawings, toys, and even some crafted ones that we can take elements from. I finally decided to go with this toy castle, but I thought it was too thin, so widened the image a bit and also updated the whole scale to fit the size of the minis I wanted to make. Once done, I printed a black and white image of the front face to use as blueprint. Here's He-Man for reference. As usual, I'm using some MDF as the base and defining some measures. The diorama had to have no more than 12cm deep, so it fitted well on my main shelf, and I went with 24cm wide. Made some marking and cut the MDF piece. I wanted to add some height on the base, so cut a piece of regular foam around 2cm high and glue it to the base with PVA. Add some weight while it dries so the MDF doesn't bend. I could then start building the castle. My first idea was to use the printed image as a guide and carve out the castle from a big piece of foam. So I pinned the image and used the X-Acto knife to start marking the main features. Then removed it and went over the cuts with a pen. The carving out method is not a simple one, and you can easily end up removing too much material, which you'll then need to fill in. So at the beginning I was very hesitant if to proceed with it or not, and I couldn't really picture a good outcome of the diorama. I thought it would be pretty difficult to reach some of the castle features, especially on the side towers. So eventually I felt more comfortable with building the towers from scratch instead of carving them out. Took some measures and cut 2 round and large pieces of foam. Also cut some round and shorter versions to act as the tower's top bases. Then moved on with the skull's helmet. I had a foam ball, so cut it around a suitable height to match the skull's diameter. The base of the castle has a rug mount, so I start measuring and marking where would that go, and also where I'll need to cut out pieces for the towers to fit. I then removed the big chunks of foam and start carving the skull's face features. This took me some time and I had to use a very sharp blade because I use regular polystyrene foam instead of the high density one. I then assembled the main parts of the tower and glue it with PVA. And making a preliminary check on the whole castle. Then marked some stone blocks and also carved them out. Cut an additional round piece as base of the helmet and also carved some stone blocks. Use my favorite concrete piece to add texture to the block. Then assembled the helmet with hot glue and defined some extra details with a marker. The taller tower has a characteristic window, so I first drafted it on the tower. Then cut individual foam pieces for the stone blocks, made a hole in the tower, and then glued the window with PVA. Added the towers to the main skull base with hot glue. Cut some random foam pieces and started gluing them to the base that makes the rock foundation. Also carved a small stone staircase that goes around the exterior of the shortest tower and hot glued it. Then cut two different sizes of stone blocks for the top of both towers. Added some texture and then glued them in a circle with PVA around the top parts. I prepared a mix of water, PVA, construction plaster and Paris plaster and gave the entire piece a cover with it. For the horn details on the helmet, I used construction plaster directly on the shapes and let it dry. Then sanded it for a smooth finish and also defined the borders better with the X-Acto knife. Also used some sandpaper over the towers. After that, I marked some odd stone blocks over the towers and then carved them out with the X-Acto knife. Added a small piece of foam to work as a wood beam under the window and carved some wood grain with a sharp tool. I also glued the helmet to the skull with PVA. Started filling up recesses with construction plaster, mainly the ones between the towers and the skull. And I smoothened them with a wet brush. Covered the back of the castle with the same plaster. Moving on with the base of the diorama, I marked the castle and then cut a layer of foam, around 1 cm high, so the exterior of the castle would be lower. Prepared a mix of Paris plaster, water, PVA, regular sand and some cat litter and covered the exterior parts of the base. Smoothened the surface with a wet brush. Used some additional construction plaster to fill in some parts and have a more flat surface. Before it dried, I added some regular sand. Used the same plaster for the edges of the base. I started thinking on how to make the small detail over the helmet's top. This has a quite unique shape, and it was hard to find something that could resemble it and had a suitable scale. I had these wood knobs which would make the trick, but they were extremely hard to cut and I wasn't satisfied with the end result. So I again reached out to my trustworthy 3D printer. I found an actual free STL of Castle Grayskull. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't he just print the whole castle then? Well, first, there's no way I'm gonna spend that much resin and it would take ages to print. And second, what's the fun in doing that? So I cut and reshaped the top part a bit with the mesh mixer tool, took some measures and scaled it accordingly and then 3D printed it. While at it, did the same with the castle's gate. Carved some additional grain lines on the wood and also a small rounded foam piece for the top of the helmet. Glued with PVA. Brushed some diluted plaster over the 3D print to add more texture. Glued some small foam pieces under the helmet to act like gum beads. Starting with the paint, I made a decoupage glue and black paint mix and covered the entire castle. Did the same with the base. Then covered the entire piece with a brownish wash, especially on recesses. Here checking some green shades that I'll be using for the stone parts. I started with a heavy dry brush of dark green. Then moved with a brighter green and loaded the brush with more paint. Used a smaller brush to cover smaller recesses. Then repeated similar dry brush passes with different tones of greens. Used a bluish one to make highlights pop up. I used the same process over the rocks of the base of the diorama. I wanted for the castle's rock foundation and the rocks on the base to have a more raw look, so added a black paint dry brush and additional passes of brownish wash. Went over the base rocks with some gray dry brush and over the dirt with a light brown dry brush. Same on the wooden beams. Started painting the gate with a primer and then give it a bright brown base. Then dry brush it with a lighter brown and painted the borders with black. This won't be seen once I slide the gate in the castle's mouth. Also painted it with a little bit of green. Then painted the metal parts of the gate and the frame with a bright gold. I prefer using synthetic paints for metallic colors. I think they have a better finish. Once done, I added a black wash to the entire gate and glued it to the castle with PVA. I thought the entire castle looked too dark. So last minute change, I decided to give it another dry brush pass over the entire stone with a lighter green. Then proceeded to glue the castle to the base with PVA. I built this 90 degrees MDF guide to use in my foam cutter. So I used it as reference to keep the castle straight so it would align with the shelf once displayed. With this, our castle is finished and we can proceed with the minis. The cartoon has a limited palette of colors, so that would make painting easier. I wanted to keep homage to such variety of colors, but still adding some metallic ones. I started by cutting and using some small cardboard pieces as bases for the minis. Wanted for a few of the characters to appear as flying, so I used a small paper clip to hold them to the castle. First, I pierced through their back with a small drill and then glued a small piece of the paper clip's plastic cover in the hole. This would allow me to remove the mini from the metal clip if needed. Then primed all minis. I used one color at the time and started with a flesh tan over He-Man and some of the characters. I did 2 passes with this color. Moved on with a brighter brown over the fur clothes. Then yellow and black, mainly for He-Man and Buzz Off. Blue and light blue for Mechanic and Orko. Green, mainly for Battle Cat and Man at Arms. And then red for several characters. I left the metallic paints for last. Covered all minis with a matte varnish and the entire castle with some diluted decoupage glue. Then assembled the minis on the castle, and let's see how our diorama ended up. I was pretty anxious and doubtful when I started this diorama, and it definitely took me some time to build. As mentioned, the foam carving technique is not an easy one, but you can complement it with other techniques. You don't need to stick with just one. And last, I'm really happy how this turned out, and the diorama really stands out in my display shelf. It shows that you don't always need to go big for your builds. I'm definitely going to make dioramas for other shows I watched and loved. As always, hit the like button if you enjoyed the diorama and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below and let me know if you would like to see other builds. I'll see you in the next craft.